Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Se-Young Chun. I am particularly pleased to be invited as the honorable speaker for this conference, since I was one time as the host of this conference as the president of CARIS. I'm going to share my ideas with you about the new trials of literacy, numeracy, and literacy, which
transform the concept of learning with introduction of plethora of training technologies such as
the next slide you can see
computer-based training, instructor-led training.
Do you have 21st century skills? No. Then do you keep? Maybe not. Well, but now you should know at least your kids at least would have. In fact, every day, people talk about 21st century skills. In order to get them, at least, you must know what they are. I tell you by listing some of them from the books, the newspapers, and great persons talk. They are creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and even computational skills, and so on and so many. Well, they are so good enough to dream of. However, it is the problem that the way to cultivate skills is not job at all. Actually, that is the history of our humankind and education. Let me tell you about the background stories why Korea has initiated smart education on June 29, 2011. Before that, I'm going to share some small experience about PISA you may once heard. I was a member of the technical group for EAD, Education at a Glance. The third edition of EAD in 1995, it was the bestseller of OECD. And there was a big shock in the world, specifically for leading countries like the US and Germany, about their low student scores in the test. So they were looking beyond the teams. And there was consensus for cross-subject assessment, which is eventually the birth of PISA, Program of International Student Assessment. And there are two heroes, Finland and Korea, we know. But as you see in the next slide, there are still unsolved questions by PISA. However, as you know very well, there are many unsolved questions. Does PISA test the right thing? What are the 21st century skills? Can they be assessed? How can school teachers teach in the classroom, by the way? The questions are continuing, and recently OECD is trying to answer by a PIA project in this report. In this project, it is questioning what others can do in literacy, numeracy, and problem solving in technology-rich environments. In the next slide, we can think again about Finland and Korea. Well, they are good, but there are the questions, what are the commons between them and what are the differences between them? There is no answer yet. My possible answer, they are very common in good reading literacy of the same letters without illiteracy and with the same people, very homogeneous. But they are different in some way. I think that is the balance of literacies. And I'll tell you one more about Korea in the next slide. Korean education has many strange indicators, even though we have very good record in PISA. Government investment in public education is relatively very low. Students show the lowest learning motivation, specifically in math and science. And families are still too much in private tutoring because of so low confidence in school education. Let me add one more in the next slide. More interesting figures from OECD report with the recent PIA in comparing with the PISA. Young adults among those big three countries in education, Korea, Finland, and Japan, they are doing so and quite similarly. However, Japanese adults do better than those Koreans, even with the same educational background. We need to think why. One possible answer may be the low effectiveness of Korean school education. This is the reason for innovation. One striking difference in the next slide, you can see Korea, which is differently from Finland and Japan, is leading in their digital reading skills of specifically youngsters. We should use for some kind of innovative action for the 21st century. So that is the background of June 29th Korean Smart Education Project. In the next, we can see the Korean Smart Education Project is a kind of very comprehensive project, and it is based on the historical experience of the 20 years try to use ICT in education. In the next slide, you see that we have 29 June 2011 Korean Smart Education was pronounced. As you can see in the next slide, it is kind of a comprehensive policy package to innovate for classroom evolution through smart technology. It has 3 areas and 5 pillars. Under the reforming educational system, it is designed to develop and reforming educational system. Online classes and assessment are promoted, and building a cloud system of open educational content was also included. Of course, teachers' role is very much strengthened for their competencies of using smart technology and utilizing for classroom teaching. And lastly, under the improving school infrastructure, it was planned to build a cloud computing practice in education. But as you can see in the next slide, the smart education concept is quite ambiguous and vague. And so we need to develop and articulate certain sort of pedagogical background. So the 5 letters of SMART are articulated into the respective dimensions of education. So S for self-directed, M for motivated, A for adaptive learning, R for resource enriched, and lastly, technology embedded school infrastructure. And we have the question then, what will be the pedagogy beyond the smart education? Let's go to the next slide. The pedagogy may be new tools of education may be necessary. So from this idea, I try to say again today about the new literacy, new system of literacy beyond basic 3 R's. That is literacy, numeracy, and literacy. Let me go further into some details with some more slides in the next. Actually, as I opened in the beginning, there is no clear answer, at least for me, about the 21st century skills learning. I think it is because we cannot understand what they are telling us. The great Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, once you say the truth, it is not any longer This tells about the impossible mission of teaching and learning. One more example, a reporter is asked, a great dancer, "Sir, what did you try to say with dance?" The dancer replied, "Why do you think I danced if I could say it?" So, as you see in the next, the pendulum of the two balancing power between 3 R's and 4 C's. Please allow me to be a little provocative. I'm an educational researcher who is some sort of uncomfortable with the big jargon of 21st century skills. Those creativity, character, communication, collaboration actually has been already with us over the history from Socrates and Confucius. We, the teachers, have been struggling to get it. We need a good tool and method, not a beautiful objective. Reading, writing, reasoning actually are the traditional tools to get those 4 C's plus alpha and those creative jargons. So, as you see in the next slide, the history of our education is the inventing the basic tools. The tools we used to teach, they were language or scripture. When we say they are letters and numbers and all kinds of media. All these media is used for education. I mean, teaching and learning in education. But as you know, education is ever difficult because actually the tools used by education is as difficult ever. So we need another sort of easy tools. Let's to the next slide. Let me think about again the balance between the literacies and this kind of 4 competencies or the 21st century skills. The basic 3 R's may not be sufficient as enough as for 4 C's. So literacy and numeracy was okay. Maybe we need one more. So I put it and I invent 1 literacy. And I am proposing you today the literacy as a new kind of very important literacy. But it is not literacy, so I call it literacy. Let's start with the literacy in some details from the next slide. Before 21st century, I think education is the function of literacy. It means that if you have more literacy, then you are more educated. But for the literacy acquisition, you can read, you must write, you can read well, and you can reckon or you can count very well. So these are the subjects in the schools, okay? And after 21st centuries, I think education is sort to be the function of 21st skills, but as I said, how to get it? Well, literacy and numeracy you have, but the reason why students and people are struggling every day because the tools to get 21st century skills may not be enough. So then maybe the literacy. So what is the literacy? The literacy, as you see in the next slide, is a skill to read and write. One, remember how you were happy to read and write your name, and you are still happy to read and write your name in foreign letter. You see the 4 great letters which developed the glorious human civilization, pyramid by hieroglyphics, and Hammurabian and Sumerian civilization by Sumer cuneiform. And so wonderful meaning letter of Chinese character for Confucius civilization, and Roman alphabetics, very logical and very good, very abundant letters for creating Hellenism and humanism. Well, I put one more for Hangul, as in the next, you can see the beautiful and very scientific tool for Korean people's literacy. I'm sure that this perfect literacy tool is the secret of the Korean miracle of the economic development in the 20th century. And numeracy, and the next one, is to count complex words in number. The number is called as the logic and order of the world. In the next slide, you can see the music was the mother of the number, and Parthenon and the Newtonian galaxy, there is the number, there is the order. This number and order is accused by the numeracy, so-called by mathematics and science. We know in the next slide, this number and mathematics is developed or invented or discovered by Pythagoras. We know the Pythagorean theorem. And Ian Stewart tells us there have been 17 great mathematical formula with numbers to have changed the world so far. We know all of us how difficult they are, which only the great genius knows. Although still young children, young kids are struggling in schools. Now I'm proposing literacy. Literacy is a tool of yours. Let's do the next slide. You can understand as you see, hear, and feel. What is the literacy? Let me think about. I think it is related to the computer tools. This is just a proposition. So before go to the literacy, let us see one very famous picture of Mona Lisa and Michelangelo. Well, I'll tell you one secret of painting. You see, the oil painting was the mother of the glorious, for instance, French Impressionism. And why was it possible? People say maybe it was because of the techniques of painting. It was from fresco techniques to oil painting. What is the secret of the oil painting? That is oil painting. Oil painting means painting and painting and painting till you won't get the best result of yours. So what I mean is that the techniques and tools is the important before your competence. So I think the new literacy means you can, for instance, draw. You can draw a picture, or you can express your story, or you can tell your experience to your mother, or to your kids, or to your friends, with many kinds of skills. Just instead of letter or writing or numbering. So in the painting analogy, people say maybe it is a layer. I mean, over painting means kind of a layer. So let me see in the next slide. Here are the examples of such kind of tools of literacy, I call it. In an avatar, I mean, this is a video tool, and Photoshop, like image tool. All these imaging and video tools in these days, the very ordinary people, even the youngsters, can draw a very wonderful picture and even design beautiful video clips. I mean, already, image and video is not such a difficult job for expert only one. So this is the tool for literacy to express your ideas in the more efficient way. This is why what I'm suggesting as the literacy. So, in Korea, in the next slide, there was a lot of stories and experience and the trials in the schools, by the school teachers, by so many people. They are asking what is the smart education, what is the 21st century skills. And I tell you, we are not quite sure yet, but we are trying to get everybody involved in understanding and expressing these new tools. And the Smart Education Society is in every year to share our experience and teachers' experience with the students in drawing and expressing and singing and dancing with the tools, just instead of writing and solving the formula. So this is the one story from South Korean Smart Education Society. Yes, this is the Facebook, or this is online, this is the cyberspace, this is Smart Society, where we can design our new world. So how to go there, how to reach there? That is, we should acquire another kind of literacy. I say that is the literacy as digital literacy or ICT literacy. This is my talk. Thank you for your kind attention, and I welcome your brilliant.
Welcome. My name is Peter Weber. I teach computer science and e-business at South Westphalia University of Applied Sciences in Soest, Germany, and I'm also the site manager of the Competence Center e-commerce, a research institution that aims at studying technology-driven change. And this is how a couple of years back we also got in touch with the topic of e-learning and started developing our own e-learning solutions. And also we thought about approaches for the systematic development and improvement of these e-learning solutions. So I'd like to talk about how we developed and improved our international online course Net Economy through canonical action research throughout the last years. Actually, the Net Economy setting is part of a continuous build and evaluate loop. We introduced the class in 2006, started as a small setting with just 2 international institutions and only about 10 to 15 students, and since then has developed into really a large setting with 6, sometimes 7 or even 8 international institutions participating and about 150 to 180 students. In the following 20 minutes, I'll start introducing our approach of educational service engineering for the systematic development and improvement of e-learning courses. And I'll then introduce the overall learning scenario of this Net Economy class. Before, in the last part, I'll dig a bit deeper.
How to go there, how to reach
changes that we implemented during the last 2 years, which are addressing actually the team building approach of this Net Economy course. My name is Peter Weber. And the technical infrastructure that we provide for this collaboration.
This is a Facebook. Just instead of writing and solving the
universities or institutions of higher education face a lot of ongoing changes, like technological developments that lead to different technology-driven usage of students who thus require or request education to be delivered in different formats.
How to go there? How to
global competition caused by, for example, also new e-learning formats like massive open online
society.
Also political efforts like the European Bologna process. Within this rapidly changing environment, it's very tricky for universities to develop e-learning strategies.
This is my talk. Thank you for your kind attention, and I welcome your brilliant
at an appropriate cost. Against this background, educational service engineering aims
my name is Peter Weber. I teach computer science and e-business at South Westphalia University of Applied Sciences in Soest, Germany, and I'm also the site manager of the Competence Center e-commerce, a research institution that aims at studying technology-driven change. And this is how a couple of years back we also got in touch with the topic of e-learning
and started developing our own e-learning solutions. And also, we thought about a project. One of the very important and successful approaches that we are using within educational service engineering is the concept of service planning.
Thank you for your kind attention.
This concept
and I welcome your brilliant.
Inspired, for example, the success within the automotive industry. Welcome. My name is Peter Weber. I teach computer science and e-business at South Westphalia University of Applied Sciences in Soest, Germany. And I'm also the site manager of the Competence Center in Commerce, a research institution that aims at studying technology-driven change. And this is how a couple of years back we also got in touch with the topic of e-learning and started developing our own e-learning solutions. And also, we thought about approaches for the systematic development and improvement on knowledge development phase, which I will introduce. So I'd like to talk about how we developed and improved our international online course in Net Economy through canonical action research throughout the last years. Learning scenarios. Actually, the Net Economy setting is part of a continuous build and evaluate loop. We introduced the class in 2006, started as a small setting with just 2 international institutions and only about 10 to 15 students, and since then has developed into really a large setting with 6, sometimes 7 or even 8 international institutions participating and about 150 to 180 students. In the following 20 minutes, I'll start introducing our approach of educational service engineering for the systematic development and improvement of learning courses. And I'll then introduce the overall learning scenario of this Net Economy class. Before, in the last part, I'll dig a bit deeper into
how to reach
changes that we implemented during the last 2 years, which are addressing actually the team building approach of this. Welcome. My name is Peter Weber. The technical infrastructure that we provide for this collaboration in this virtual environment. The class is split up into 3 phases.
Just instead of writing and
universities or institutions of higher education face a lot of ongoing changes. The technological developments that lead to different technology-driven change of students who thus require or request education to be delivered in different formats.
How to go there? How to reach?
For example, also new e-learning forms like massive open online
Society.
also political efforts like the European Bologna case study phase. Within this rapidly changing environment, it's very tricky for universities to develop e-learning
because this is my talk. Thank you for your kind attention, and I welcome your brilliant.
Against this background, educational service engineering. My name is Peter Weber. I teach computer science and e-business at South Westphalia University of Applied Sciences in Soest, Germany. And I'm also the site manager of the Competence Center in Commerce, a research institution that aims at studying technology-driven change. This is how a couple of years back we also got in touch with the topic of e-learning and started developing our own e-learning solutions. And also, we thought about approaches, successful approaches that we are using with educational service engineering is the concept of service planning.
Thank you for your kind attention, and I welcome your brilliant.
For example, when working on our e-learning settings and offers.
Welcome. My name is Peter Weber. I teach computer science and e-business at South Westphalia University of Applied Sciences in Soest, Germany. I'm also the site manager of the Competence Center in Commerce, a research institution that aims at studying technology-driven change. This is how a couple of years back we also got in touch with the topic of e-learning and started developing our own e-learning solutions. And also, we thought about approaches for the systematic development and improvement of knowledge development. So I'd like to talk about how we developed and improved our international online course Net Economy through canonical action research throughout the last years. Actually, the Net Economy setting is part of a continuous build and evaluate loop. We introduced the class in 2006, started as a small setting with just 2 international institutions and only about 10 to 15 students. And since then has developed into really a large setting 6, sometimes 7, or even 8 international institutions participating, and about 150 to 180 students. In the following 20 minutes, I'll start introducing our approach of educational service engineering for systematic development and improvement of learning courses. I'll then introduce the overall learning scenario of systematic economy class. Before, in the last part, I'll dig a bit deeper.
How to reach
which are addressing actually single approach of this workshop. My name is Peter Weber. Infrastructure to provide for
specific. It is a Facebook.
Change the procedure into an approach.
The class is split up into 3 groups.
Just instead of writing and solving the
institutions of higher literacy face large changes and also technological developments that lead to different technology-driven change. During regards require or request education to be delivered in different forms.
How to go there, how to reach.
For example, also learning forms like massive and online
Christian society.
also political efforts like the European Bologna case study. Within this rapidly changing environment, it's very tricky for universities to develop e-learning.
It is my turn. Thank you for your kind attention, and I welcome your brilliant.
Against this background, educational service engineering. My name is Peter Weber. I teach computer science and e-business at South Westphalia University of Applied Sciences in Germany. I'm also the site manager of the Competence Center in Commerce, research institution that aims at studying technology-driven change. This is how a couple of years back we also got in touch with the topic of e-learning and started developing our own e-learning solutions. Also, we thought about approaches that we are using with educational service engineering is the concept of service.
Thank you for your kind attention, and I welcome your brilliant.
The central coordination platform working on our learning settings offers now
welcome. My name is Peter Weber. I teach computer science and e-business at South Westphalia University of Sciences in Germany. I'm also the site manager of the Competence Center in Commerce, a research institution that aims at studying technology-driven change. This is how a couple of years back we also got in touch with e-learning and started conducting our own e-learning solutions. And also, we thought about approaches for the systematic development of improvement on knowledge and self-space. So I'd like to talk about how we develop and improve our online, international online course Meta Economy through research throughout the last year. Actually, the Meta Economy setting is part of the continuous build and development. We introduced us in 2006. Started as a small setting with just 2 international institutions and only about 10 to 15 students, and since then it's developed into really a large setting with 6, sometimes 7, or even 8 international institutions participating, and about 150 to 180 students. In the following 20 minutes, I'll start introducing our approach of educational service engineering for systematic learning courses. I'll then introduce the overall learning scenario of systematic economy class. Before in the last
how to reach
what are addressing actually single approach of this workshop. My name is Peter Weber. I infrastructure to provide for
specific. It is a Facebook.
This way we are able to analyze approach.
The class is split up into 3 groups.
Just instead of writing and solving the
in addition to this,
literacy,
is large technological developments lead to different technology-driven change. We thus require or request education to be delivered in different forms. For example, also learning forms like massive and online
Christian society.
also political efforts like the European Bologna case study. Within this rapidly changing environment, it's very tricky for universities to develop e-learning.
It is my turn. Thank you for your kind attention, and I welcome your brilliant.
in e-learning. For the future
against this background, educational service and learning, my name is Peter Weber. I teach computer science and e-business at South Westphalia University of Applied Sciences in Germany. I'm also the site manager of the Competence Center for Commerce, research institution that aims at studying technology-driven change. This is how a couple years back we also got in touch with here and started developing our own learning solutions. Also, we thought about approaches. The couple approaches we are using with educational service engineering is the concept of service.
Thank you for your kind invitation, and I welcome your brilliant.
In this international setting,
my name is Peter Weber. I teach computer science and e-business at the University of Germany. I'm also the site manager of the Competence Center for Commerce, a research institution that aims at studying technology-driven change. This is how a couple of years back we also got in touch with learning and started conducting our own learning solutions. And also, we thought about approaches for systematic development. So I'd like to talk about how we develop and improve our online international course economy through research to
this e-learning presentation.
Actually, the economy setting is part
very
of
interesting
built and
the top 2%.
2006.
Everybody wants to
started as a small
achieve
setting with
whether it is in their personal life
and
or
only
their
about 10
professional
to
life.
15
But
students.
something very
And since
interesting
then,
has happened
developed into really a large
to the
setting,
available
6,
technology.
sometimes 7, or even
That
8
is, that
international
the personal and
participating,
professional life
and about 100
have merged into one.
In the following 20 minutes,
So
I'll
what
start
constitutes-
introducing our approach of
What
educational
really
service
means what
engineering,
it is the top 2% of the
learning
population.
courses.
That's what
I'll
we're
then
going
introduce the
discussing.
overall learning
With
scenario
the title
of
of the
for the
society.
lab.
First off,
How to
we all want to learn, and we
a
want
brilliant.
something very important that we also need to do is learn
My name is
to
Peter
unlearn.
Weber.
And e-learning offers
Yes,
great
it is a great tool.
in order to be able to do that. When I say learn to unlearn,
Just
many
be
people can get a
careful
little bit
writing
confused what it means. Learn,
and
or you
interesting.
and the
I
fact is
think
that we need to unlearn
Rocket
that which is not
development
working
needs
in our
technology-driven
environment,
change.
that which is not working in our
Because
life,
requires
that
a
which
request
is
to
not
be
working
delivered
in our
in your
current situation. And then learn that which
for
does
example,
work. And many times we have to take out in order to take in what does work.
your Bologna.
And for that, we're going to be using
So in this
a very
rapidly changing
popular
environment,
law,
it's very
and
tricky
it's the
for
law
universities
of 5.
to develop
It's very
learning
Oh, I
interesting.
see, because
For
it
instance,
is mindful.
the law of 5 applies to everything,
And I welcome
absolutely
your
everything in your life.
brilliant.
And one of the things that we can apply it to
against this background. Educational service and learning aims
are
at using computer
the
science and
average
business
of
at South
the
Australia
5
University.
people that you surround
Germany.
yourself with.
I'm also the
So if
site
your best
manager of the
friends are
Competence Center
John,
for Commerce,
Paul, Sue, Dexter,
research
and
institution that
Mary,
aims
see
at
on the
studying
screen,
technology-driven
you are
change.
the average
This is
of
how
all
couple
those
years
5 combined. What do I mean?
we
You
started
surround
developing our
yourself
own learning
with your
solutions.
closest people.
Also,
Your
we thought
finances
about one
are going to be the average of what
yeah,
your 5
it's
closest
using
people
with the
are.
educational service
Your
engineering
head
is the
is
concept
very
of service.
likely
Thank you for your kind
the average
invitation.
of
And
what
I
5
welcome
people
your
that you
brilliant.
socialize with frequently are.
My name is Peter Weber. I teach computer science and business at the
Closest people
University
to you are. Your relationships
I'm also the
and
site
the way
manager
that
of
you
the Competence
handle
Center
and
for
manage
Commerce.
them are
This is
going
one
to be an
institution that
average
aims at
of
studying
the 5
technology-driven
people
change.
that you are
This is
closely
how a couple years back we also got in
relationship
touch
with are,
with
and your
we
social
started
rates
conducting our own
are
learning
going to be
solutions.
the average
And
of
also,
the 5
we thought about
people
approaches
that you
for
socialize
systematic
with.
development.
So if that's the case, it's
So,
important
so I'd like to
that
talk
we
about
realize
how
that
we
we
develop
need to be very
improve
careful with
our
who
online
are the
international
5
networks
people
like economy
that I
through
socialize with, and
research
what
to us
do
alike.
these is e-learning that we want to take a
Actually,
look
when
at
an economy is having
focusing the
part
crowd.
of
Where is the crowd going? And unfollowing.
six
Everybody wants to
large
do
and
something
small
different
settings.
than what the crowd is doing. There is a very interesting story about a farmer
And since then,
who's on his
developed
field,
into really
and he
large
notices
settings,
that there is a state truck driving by, and out of the
and about
truck
100.
there are some workers, and one of
In
them
the following
gets
20
out,
minutes,
so
or
digs
stop
a hole in the ground, and goes back to the truck, and then another of the employees that is also
now
on
then
the truck
introduce
goes
overall
in
learning
and fills in the hole.
for the
They
lab.
move over, first about 20 feet, and the employee, the first worker, goes also and digs a hole in the ground, and then the other one goes and fills it back in.
Yes.
The farmer is watching this, and he's
I'm asking is put it up with
learns what's happening. So he decides to approach the gentleman and ask him. He's there. He says, "Hey, what are you guys doing? I see that you're digging a hole and then filling it up with dirt." One of the workers said, "Well, what happened is that we are working on a highway beautification project, and the guy that plants the tree, he's learned that they're working following a process that no longer makes sense, because if the person that is in charge of planting the tree is sick out today, then the other two processes need to be eliminated. People rise and the masses, for the most part, follow what has been done all along. And also follow. Another aspect is top learners. You have a great opportunity today, and top learners become top earners. If you want to be the top 2% of the population, you have to take advantage of the many e-learning opportunities that are out there. And I can tell you from first-hand experience, for many years, I have invested heavily in what are audio tapes, audio books, videos, and so forth. And now, all of that material is available. So we have an opportunity to go to the internet and use education and personal in order to enhance our position regardless of what area you want to use, and that is completely free of charge. We used to think that things
So let's talk about how
that is no longer the situation. Now we know that we can acquire through modernization and thanks to technology great value and we very cost. We no longer need to have a lot of money to be able to study in a university. Many well-known universities in the United States and abroad have courses that are identical to the courses that are available register for the college. You will not get out of the diploma, so you should get. And one of the things that is no longer exposed. I want to invite you today to empower yourself and then another of the issues of those tools, those the vehicles that the internet is, and the fantastic theme of e-learning, and how can you make your life better also using these tools. How can you make your life better in order to make someone else's life also better? Because if there's something that is important in life, that I've learned I can focus strictly on things I'm filling it up, fellow. Work society, we are working and e-learning highway beautification precisely that I learned that with many other programs. They're working following a process that no longer makes sense because the person that is in charge speak out today, and the other processes need to be and for the most part follow what has been done all along. Another aspect is top learners. The order to make someone else's life there's something that is important in life. I can focus strictly on things. I'm feeling it up, fellow. Working, and if he learns that way.